everyone, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me talking about the 13 books I read in September. September was a better reading month than August, and October is not looking so hot. It is the 11th of October and I've only read 2 books this month. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm like stressing over the holidays. October is the start of holidays in my house because my daughter's birthday kicks off all of the big events in my life and my family's life. But anyways, I took part in the magical readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast, and I will link my TBR and my vlog. I forget what I did. I will link my videos that I did pertaining to the magical readathon down below. But yes, these are the physical books I read in September, and the rest are ebooks. So last month was a very ebook heavy month, and library books. So the first book I finished in the month of September was Life of Pi by Yaan Martel, and this was one of the choices that I chose for the Readathon bingo board that also happened in September or August. I think it was August. Yeah, it was August. And I finished it in September. So this is about a boy named Pi, and he lives in India with his family. And his father owns this zoo, and there's so many animals. And then it's a historical fiction. It takes place in like the British colonial era, and the Pi and his family decide to close the Indian zoo and move to Canada, somewhere, I think Toronto. And they've sold all their animals, and the animals that are coming with them to be put into the U.S. zoos and the Canadian zoo, they are on this Japanese cargo ship with the Patels, I think. Pi Patel, I think that was his last name. But anyways, I don't remember the last names, but Pi wakes up one night after hearing this loud boom, and the ship is sinking. The animals are running frantic, and the crew of the boat toss him over into this lifeboat. And he doesn't understand why the crew is not going to get his parents or following him into this boat. And then the lifeboat drifts off away from the ship, and turns out there's a hyena in the lifeboat, and eventually an orangutan named Orange Juice, and then a tiger named Richard Parker. And there's also, what was it? There was a hyena and a zebra. So the zebra ends up falling into the boat and breaking its leg. So it becomes bait for the hyena. And then Orange Juice, the orangutan, she comes floating by on the bunch of bananas. And the hyena eventually kills the orangutan, and then the tiger, Richard Parker, ends up killing the hyena. And Pi and Richard Parker end up like having territorial issues over this lifeboat, and yeah. So Pi ends up spending over 200 and something days in the Pacific Ocean, and he's all by himself, and it was a great book. It was formatted like diary entries, but not like days. Some like entries of the diary was like a supply list of what he had left, or his thoughts and reasoning between why he did this and that. And it talks about like a carnivorous island, which blew my mind. And yeah, after I finished reading the book, I watched the movie with my husband and my 3 daughters, and it was just amazing. It was beautiful, stunning. The visuals was breathtaking. the island. I thought it was going to be like a little spookier, but yeah, it was really great. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5, and I highly recommend. It's a classic, really great. It's like a modern classic. And I want to read more by Yaan and Martel because it was a great story. Second book I read was The Changeling by Victor Lavelle. In previous videos I said that I didn't know why I ended up putting this on my holds list. And then I read it and I remembered why. It is fucking amazing. It is one of 2 of my favorite books this month. And it's about this guy. He's got daddy issues. So he was raised by a single mom who came from the Congo, or Ghana. And she has seen and been through a lot of traumatic experiences in her life. Not Ghana. Congo? I think it's Congo. I'll put it right here. If it's Congo or Ghana. I think it's Congo. So the mom ends up taking care of the son, and the son has nightmares from when he's very little all the way up until the big event. And so he ends up growing up and thinking about this story that his dad always told him before he left. And he meets his wife. His wife is a librarian, and she takes a while to say yes to going out with him. And then they get married and get pregnant. So they end up having their baby on the A train, and the A train breaks down. So they're all alone with strangers, and they get this group of kids to be bodyguards and close the windows so they can't be filmed and taken to the press, because they're not special or anything, but babies aren't born in public places every day, or maybe they are, I don't know. But yeah, so months go by after the baby's born, and the mom is suffering from severe postpartum depression. And then one day she just snaps and she says, "This is not my son. This is not my baby." It turns out that there's goblins afoot. And this book is an urban fairy tale, and it was amazing. It kept me on the edge of my seat. It was a freaking page turner. The chapters were short and sweet, and yeah. So the ending, I would love a sequel following the kid and his growing up with these traumas and experiences, and eventually something coming back. I think that would be great. And I need to read more by Victor Lavelle. I think there's another one that's really, really popular called The Ballad of Black Tom. And it's this thin. I want to read that so bad. But Victor Lavelle, he's one of my new auto-buy authors just because of The Changeling. And yeah. So if you have not read this, read this. I gave it a 5 out of 5. This book I read was a NetGalley e-arc. It came out in June, I think. And that is Riding the Edge, a love song to Deborah. And this is by Michael Tobin. This is a nonfiction memoir about this guy and his cross country in Europe road trip with his partner Deborah. They are both, he's a psychologist and she's a psychotherapist. Something to do with psychology. And they decide just to one day sell their business, or close their practices, sell their businesses, and go explore their roots. He is Jewish and he wants to go to Jerusalem, and she wants to explore her Lebanese roots and go to Lebanon and meet her family that is still living in Lebanon. And so they start in Paris, and it's pouring down rain. They do this bicycle ride through France and Italy and all the way to Greece, and they meet these families along the way, and they learn their stories. Mostly are about World War II, and most of the people that they met were affected by the concentration camps. Either one was a survivor, or one had family that escaped and were in hiding, or was part of the resistance, and they just like told these stories, and it was so great. I loved it. It's what I wanted when I read The Zookeeper's Wife. But anyways, they go to Lebanon first, and it is like a war-torn country. So they have to watch out for bombs and missile launchers and AK-47s. And her family is like, why are you coming here? We don't want your pity. Why would you come here and then go back to your home a week later and be all fine and hunky-dory while we have to stay here? And her cousins are like that. And then her great-grandma is like so freaking excited to see her and makes this big feast that would probably take up all of her rationing or her money for the month. And yeah, it was really great. And then they go to Jerusalem, and it's not really, I don't remember if it goes into detail about his time in Jerusalem, but it goes into detail about how they sell everything once they get done with their trip and move to Jerusalem and have a family, and how Deborah converts to Judaism to stay with Michael, and yeah, and how it's a love song or a love letter to Deborah because she eventually gets Alzheimer's. So I liked certain aspects of this story. I liked the bicycle journey, and I loved the Holocaust stories. But the religious aspect and the judgmental Lebanese cousins who were like, why are you coming here? I mean, like, she just wants to explore her roots, and you think she's got an agenda. Like, she's like, oh, well, rubbing it in their faces that she's free and that she can leave whenever she wants. Like, it wasn't like that, but I don't know. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. Time for my least favorite book of September, and that is Xanadu by John Mann. This is Europe's discovery, or Marco Polo's discovery of East Asia, or China. And I thought I was going to learn about Marco Polo. I didn't. I learned that he was an Italian explorer, and that he was obsessed with Kalani, something. It reminded me of the book Jungleland that I read 2 years ago. It was another nonfiction where the author literally goes in the footsteps of an explorer. And yeah, so basically John Mann, he goes in Marco Polo's route, and it's like said, or it's well known that Marco Polo wrote about places that he didn't really explore, and he said he did, and how he spent so much time in the presence of the emperor, who was the great-great-grandson of Attila the Hun, or no, Genghis Khan. And I didn't like this book. Everything I read, I forgot immediately. That's why I'm having such a hard time articulating my thoughts, because I basically don't remember what I read. I would read a page, put it down, and then be like, what the fuck did I just read? I don't remember anything. But there were some things I remember, like the Pleasure Dome. The author had so many freaking tangents. He didn't really talk. He talked about what Marco Polo seen and what route, but he mostly like focused on the emperor and how he wanted to go to battle and conquer these other lands. And he talks about the Pleasure Dome that was made all out of bamboo. And the author goes into detail about the measurements of each piece of bamboo and how the Pleasure Dome was constructed. That's a whole freaking chapter that I just flipped over, because who cares about the measurements of a Pleasure Dome? I don't. Part where Marco Polo, or yeah, somebody had a ghostwriter in prison that exaggerated most of Marco Polo's book, and it was just, it's not what I was expecting. But I did learn that this book was like the basis of the Netflix show Polo, which I want to be watching because I am intrigued, and hopefully I will learn more about Marco Polo than this fucking book did, because I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I should give it a 1 because the fucking Pleasure Dome was a buzzkill, and but yeah. I didn't know that Marco Polo was Italian. And that when he finally got to leave China, that the emperor didn't want him to go, that he and his father and his uncle, like, had to, like, sneak their way out. And, yeah, and then when they got back to Italy, they expected a warm welcome and that all the family to come and, like, bow at their feet because they were royal. And it was just, ugh. I hated it. 2 out of 5. I got a book to hold up now. So, the book I read out loud to my kids last month, the first one out of 2, was Paola, Santiago and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Mejia. I was given the second book as a blog tour spot. Still have not read it yet. But I was so excited to read this because I read the short story about Bruto and the flower in the Cursed Carnival and Other Calamity anthology that Rick Riordan did with the Rick Riordan Presents authors. And that was my favorite one. So going into this, I expected to learn a lot more about Paola. I was hoping that she was some kind of demigod or had some god's ancestry. No. It goes into La Llorona and that myth and that legend. And I have already read a story this year on La Llorona, and I have to say the other one by Ryan Calejo, Charley Hernandez. It was a lot better than this one. But this is about Paola Santiago, and her 2 friends go hang out by the river a lot. And in this town that they live in, all the adults tell them, don't go by the river because the weeping woman will get you. And so they hang out by the river. Paola is into science and space and facts, and she doesn't believe any of the superstitious things and the myths and the legends. Her mom is like the town psychic. Not town psychic, but she goes very into the legends and the superstitions. And one day, her best friend, Emma, I think her name is Emma. Yeah. Emma goes missing. She's supposed to meet them at the river. They go missing. So, Paola and her best friend, Dante, they go searching for her. And they get lost in this cactus field, and they find this group of kids, and then they learn about what is really going on, and that, yeah, all is not what it seems, and that the legends are true. So, this story dragged. It didn't pick up until, like, this little bit. That's where the action started, it seemed. And I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. I love the short story about Paola and her taking her chupacabra puppy, Bruto, to get a flower. Because he can't survive on Starburst. But, I don't know. This wasn't what I was expecting. I wanted more. And it didn't... I don't know. I am going to be reading the second one soon, and that is Paola Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares, but I'm still thinking on this one. Like, every time I look at it, I go over what I liked and disliked, but yeah. Do I recommend it? Yes. But was it my favorite out of the Rick Riordan Presents stories so far? No. But it holds it's like a great addition to the Riordan Presents, because it does have a myth. So, yes. I want to learn more about her father in the next one, and was he really, like, part of the mythology? What was the deal with the flashlight? You know? And the grandma, she was my favorite. So, yes. 3 out of 5. Okay, the next book I read was another nonfiction, and it was A Long Way Round by Ewan McGregor and Charley Boorman. This is the perfect companion to the TV series Long Way Round, where they did a motorcycle journey around the world, starting from London, England, and they stop in New York City. It took them 3 months to do it, and they go through London, Paris, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Mongolia, and Alaska, and Canada, and the US. So, I think this is like the perfect comparison, because it's a companion. It has pictures that were not shown in the show, and the show, it shows them that they're happy and go lucky, and there's like 1 or 2 big fights, and in the book, it goes through all of their arguments and like their thoughts, like, should we keep doing this? Should we just give up and quit? And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 because the sections that I was reading in, the pictures didn't match up. Like, I could be reading about the Ukraine and it would be showing the pictures from their time in Mongolia, and they hadn't even gotten to Mongolia yet. I was bored with the America journey because they go to a horse ranch or a buffalo ranch, and then it goes into detail about their time visiting the Orange County Choppers, or the Orange Choppers. I forget. I'm not into motorcycles, but I flew through this documentary series and the 2 sequels after, and it was great. I loved it, and I could not stand the bit with Paul Sr. and yeah, it wasn't my favorite. So the American time I didn't like, and I didn't like it in the show either because it ended. But I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I loved it. I loved reading more about the arguments and what they were thinking, and seeing that they really did argue, because I thought it was like a hunky-dory road trip, that there was barely any fighting. I was wrong. So yes, I recommend watching the documentary. It's on Apple TV Plus or Apple Plus if you want to watch it, and then read the book, or read the book then watch the show. But I watched the show first and then read the book, because I learned that it was a book after. That's how I usually do with my documentaries. I watch the documentaries and then read the books. Another thing I like to do are books and shows that I like that format, documentary and books, is Levison Wood. His Walking the Nile, Walking the Americas, Walking the Himalayas series. Great. But yes, 4 out of 5. And I can't wait to read Long Way Down, where they start from Ireland or Scotland. He's Scottish. So Scotland, and go all the way down to Cape Town, South Africa. So, but I also want to rewatch Long Way Round. My second favorite read of the month. I read it on ebook, and then I gushed about it so much that my husband went to Books A Million and bought me a copy, and it was the last one they had on the shelves. But that is Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao, and I love this book. I read the prologue and immediately fell in love. It is Pacific Rim meets The Handmaid's Tale. Going into this, I had never watched Pacific Rim. Didn't know what it was about. The Handmaid's Tale, that's a different story. The Handmaid's Tale, the book, it's okay. But the show, show is everything. I am ready for season 5. But anyways, we're going to get into this. So this takes place in China, and girls, they have no freedoms, they have no rights, they are looked down upon, and their families either sell them, or the girls have to give themselves up to the government to become concubines to the men and the pilots, because they're being attacked. It's about this girl named Zitian. Her older sister has been killed. She was a concubine pilot, and like all the other girls, her death doesn't matter. And so Zitian vows to get revenge on the pilot who killed her sister. And her family is just awful to her. They go, well, you took the food out of our mouths, and that we deserve the money that you're making, and blah 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 blah, and you need to honor us and stuff like that. The women have it so bad. Even the grandpa beats on the grandma, and that's just but yeah, so she becomes a concubine to the pilot that killed her sister, and she fights the mind grip, and she ends up becoming the Iron Widow, and she ends up getting paired with the worst pilot, Shimon, and he is branded a prisoner. He's got the prisoner character on his face because he killed his family. Regicide. You can't kill your family. And so they are paired up, and he is known as the Iron Demon. She's Iron Widow. And together they fight these invaders, and they are also being what's the word? They are also being looked down upon by the other pilots and the government and their handlers, and they are hoping that he kills her because she is a problem. She is a woman and she cannot do it. And so they end up, but there's other women that have bonded with their pilots, and then they have a ceremony where they marry each other. But yeah, it's great. So heart-wrenching. I have a couple of quotes from this book that just changed everything for me. Men want us so badly for our bodies, yet hate us so much for our minds. And if that's not true today, then I don't know what the fuck is. And then also, another true statement. The entitled assholes of the world are sustained by girls who forgive too easily. So, ladies, if you have an asshole in your life, don't apologize. Kick their ass. But I finished this on the day it was released, and I was so upset because I need the sequel badly. And yeah, it says in Huaxia, the highest honor for a young girl is to be selected as a concubine pilot. I love this. While I was reading this, I also watched Pacific Rim. I was so mad at that movie because it wasn't this. I was like, oh, Pacific Rim came out first. I know that. But this will never be made into a movie because it's so freaking similar to Pacific Rim. Now, if Pacific Rim decides to do this in its franchise and get Xiran Zhao aboard, yes. But, I'm so upset that this will never be a movie on its own. But it was amazing, and I saw so many similarities of The Handmaid's Tale in it, and it's just, I love this book. If you have not read it, pick it up. It's amazing. I loved it so much, and I will probably do a reread sometime next year, and hopefully that the sequel will be out next year, so it is worth the $17.99 that my husband paid for it. So, yes. Read this book. Next book I read, I've had it for over a year or two, and that is Glow Girl by M. Weidenbenner. This was another blog tour spot that I was supposed to do years ago, and I never read it. And I've been having it on my TBR every month, but haven't been mentioning it. I haven't been making it a priority, but this month I did. And I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. It is about a girl who finds out that she has powers. And it's known that everybody has powers. Not everybody, but the country is being divided. Those who have powers and those who don't. And those who don't are scared of the ones who have powers and are like treating them badly. And then these schools are popping up all over the country for the ones that have powers. And it's like a sanctuary, a safe haven. And so, I read this as an ebook. I was flying through it. And so much so that I can't remember the girl's name. But it kept my attention. This girl, she can heal animals. And so she finds her powers early on when she's young. Her parents are vets. And so the sick animals come into the vets all the time. And she can feel their pain. And the only way to get rid of it is to put her hands on them, heal them, and then go get sick. Because she's expelling the sickness and the trauma that the pain that the animal was feeling. She's expelling it from her body. And so one day her parents just decided to go off to Africa to do this thing. And she's stuck with her aunt, who also does things with animals, like a animal barbershop groomer. And then one day this guy mysteriously shows up at school. He's a new kid. And turns out that he's undercover to find out why kids are going missing, and those with powers. And they end up forming a relationship. It's like very insta love, and I didn't really like that. So the author, she's older lady. She's elder, not elderly, but she's up in age. And this book felt like a teenager wrote it. Because it was choppy. It didn't flow. It felt like, oh yeah, I love you. Will you... Like, when the two kids, the boy and the girl, when they were just met, they were avoiding each other like, oh, well, if you don't want to see me, then I'll run the other way. And then the guy was like, a few pages later, when they were in school together in the same class, hey, I saw you this morning. I saw you turn a different direction, and I kept on running because I had a feeling that you didn't want to talk to me. And then she's going, well, if you wanted to talk to me, I would have kept going. All you had to do was signal me or something like that. And it was just very juvenile. But, yes. The writing was crappy. But the story it kept my attention. And I don't know. It's like the first in the droids. That's what they're called. The ones with powers. And then the ones not with powers, they're called something. It's something with a T. But it says on the cover that it's book 1 in the droid series. It takes place in Detroit. So, droids, Detroit. And, yeah. This book was written in 2018, I think. And there's no sequel. So, I don't know. But, if there is a sequel, I won't be reading it. Because I honestly don't care that much about this story. And, yeah. Look what I finally read. And I read the third book last year in October, which is crazy because I could have sworn that I read it this year. That's how vivid and how vividly I remember the third book. But no, I read it a year ago. And I finally read The House of Hades by Rick Riordan. Ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. It wasn't as great as The Mark of Athena. But so, this is Roman mythology, and we're following Roman demigods and Greek demigods that are together on this quest to stop an all-out war between the demigods and the Greek and Roman gods. And if you hear that, my phone is dead. Anyways, we follow two characters at the end of the third book. Something major happened to them, and I thought it was going to be more spectacular and eventful than it was, and that was the boring part of this book, which let me down. The people that they meet along the way to the doors, Damison, I felt so bad when they left him behind. I loved that Nico talked about his sexuality with Jason and everything. I loved that conversation between the two of them. Loved it. And there's some, I didn't know that somebody had a crush on Percy, and they're bitter about it. And yeah, so it was great. The fighting between the Greek and the Roman personalities in Frank's head, like Mars fighting with Ares in his head, was just, it was great. I loved reading it. And Coach frickin' Hedge. I love what is happening to him. I felt bad that he was on the ship and not where he needed to be, and that I hope nothing bad happens to him. They mentioned Terminus, but he's not in this, and I was a little upset. That's probably why there's a 4-star, not a 5-star, but yeah. And I'm sad over Bob. He wanted to see the sky. He says, "Tell the stars I said hello." And I'm just over here blubbering. And just, I need to pick up Blood of Olympus. I'm going to be reading that next month. I'm doing a little secret, or not secret, but I'm doing a little special thing for my TBR in November. And that's one of the books that I'm going to be reading. And I just, so good, man. Ugh. The bad thing about reading all these books in 1 month is that I have to talk about them all at the same time. Okay, so 3 more books. I read Amulet Volume 6, Escape from Lucien. This is a graphic novel series by Kazu Kibuishi, and I started the series in January. My daughter, she had her own little yearly TBR list, and this graphic novel series was on it, and she read the first book on the very first day of the year. She finished it and was like, "Mama, you have to read it." And so I read it, and I kept reading it with her. So the 6th volume, it's about the kids, and yeah, I ended up I didn't even rate it. So what should I rate it? Did I rate it on Goodreads? That's the question. It's a middle grade fantasy, and I wish that Max's storyline went into more detail. I finished this on September 28th. I read it that day. And because he is finally set free from his loyalty to the elves, and he's like over 80 years old, so he is finally set free, and one of his old classmates, who is also a stonekeeper, is like there when he leaves, and it's just, I wish it went into more detail. I'm ready to read the 7th one, but I'm not in a rush because this series feels like it's gotten... It's like one battle at a time against the elves. Speaking of elves, the Elf King, his mask has spikes in it. What is up with that? That was sick. So, yeah. I can't tell you much about this one because I read it and it didn't hold my attention. I just liked what I saw of Max and the Elf King. And the Elder Tree, Father Charles. And the second pilot, Robert, with he was like all high and mighty, and then he was a little freaking coward. Hated it. So I'm gonna stop this clip now because it's just, I can't go on. I can't articulate my thoughts on this one because I can't remember it. So was it really a 4? I read out loud to my kids in September was Willa of Dark Hollow by Robert Beatty. This is the sequel companion to Willa of the Wood, and Willa of the Wood was amazing. This one, I don't know why they call it a sequel, or not a sequel. I don't know why they call it a companion, because it goes along with the first story. Willa, she has so many things that she does wrong, and she thinks they're good, but they end up not going the way she plans. So she is looking at these loggers one day. They're like fighting with her father even more about taking his land and killing the trees to build the railroad track. And the father has sent his son away. The little brother, he has died, and it's just Willa and Hylia left with their father. And so one day, Willa's in the woods, and she's near the logging camp, which she's not supposed to do. And she finds this little baby bear stuck in a ravine. And the mother bear is on the other side trying to get the little baby out. And so Willa goes down into the ravine and helps the little baby bear escape. And along the way, she needs help, and because she's having trouble getting this little heavy ass bear up the mountain. Not the mountain, but the side of the ravine. And this blonde haired girl that she names the Wheat Girl helps her and then disappears. And then one of the loggers sees the mom bear and shoots it, and Willa now has the responsibility of this little bear. And so one day the loggers come onto her father's land and say, "You murdered my brother, you're going to jail, and you're going to be hung up." And loggers see this little baby bear run out of the woods, and that like guilts the father. And so he gets taken in by the sheriff, and Hylia decides to go stop them. And Willa's like, "No, you need to go gather up the rest of the mountain families and the rest of the Cherokee and get them to like protest outside the jail cell." And then Willa goes to the loggers, and eventually the wolves come, and it's just great. I'm not going to tell any more because it is great. Willa of Dark Hollow, so her old clan lair, it's been what she did at the very end of the first book has dire consequences on the surrounding area. And all of the spirits of the trees and the butterflies and the birds and the squirrels and the bear and the wolves that the loggers have killed come back to harm them and take revenge. And it's just creepy as fuck. And it scared me a little because I have an acre of land that I need to clear because me and my husband are like planning on building our forever home. And this book it scared me a little bit. You know? And every time a tree gets cut down, I think of the bleeding from the sap and the screaming and are they okay? And I'm like, this book will touch you and hit you in a way that you're not expecting. But I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5. The last book I read in September was another 5-star read, but it wasn't a favorite. But I read Dark Spies by Matthew Dunn. This being my favorite, like, just it makes starting the series with the first book that was just so awful worth it. So this is the Spycatcher series by Matthew Dunn. This is the 4th book in the series. I own this book. I read it. I won it in a Goodreads giveaway years ago. And I started the first book back in February, and I hated it. I was going to give up on this series. I was going to get rid of this book, and it wasn't even worth it reading the rest of the series to get to this one. So I ended up reading the second one, really enjoyed it. And so I was like, okay, let me read the third one. Third one was okay. It was better than the first one. This one, 5 out of 5. It takes place mostly in America, which the first one took place in America and I didn't really like, but this one was more emotional. This one was more tense, and Will Cochran is not as arrogant anymore. He's starting to doubt himself after all the things that he's seen. And I love the different plots. Each character had more time. The plot lines blended seamlessly. It's not all about Will anymore. The person in the CIA manhunting him, she was a badass. And it deals with the sexism. It shows sexism and misogyny. There's 2 love interests, in my opinion. Again, the main love interest that the author chose for Will dies. That's a thing. It happened in the first book. It happened in the second book. It didn't really happen. Well, the third love interest in the third book didn't die, but she was with somebody else. So, the fourth, this one, she dies. But I shipped Will with the girl he met on the bus and helped him, like, disguise himself when they got to the train station from the bus. I shipped them. Not Will and Emma, but Will and Ellie. So, and the author needs to come up with better names, honestly. Emma and Ellie are too close together. But, yeah. It was very great. The plot, the twist, did not see coming. Well, yes, I kind of did. I take that back. Because the wife, her husband, he's having an emotion. I can't wait to read the 5th book. I'm not going to read the 5th book this year. I know I got 3 more to read in this series and then it's done. I'm going to be reading the 5th book in January and finishing the series next year. So, because I have some other books that I want to read and finish this year. But I am so glad that I started this series and stuck with it. And yeah, I'm going to be getting rid of this anyway because it was a pain to read. And I've cracked the spine several times. And I mean, you can't really avoid that with mass markets. But yeah, and it's just, why? But yes, highly enjoyed. That is it for my 12 book September wrap up. I hope you enjoyed. My throat is on its last legs. I have no water, which is a shock. Yeah, so I will leave any reviews down for prequels and other books and series that I've mentioned down below. I will link my magical readathon videos down below. And yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video.